Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Caris May, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commodore Scott Lockie. We warmly welcome the family of Private Reginald James Scott, whose story will be read shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge Rear Admiral Stephanie Keck, Deputy Director, Joint Improvised Threat Defeat Agency from the United States of America. We also welcome Mr. Carlos Moran, Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Chile, Captain Carlos Schneit, and Ship's Company of the training ship Esmeralda, and Captain Raul Zamorano, Chilean Defence and Naval Attaché to Australia. We also welcome representatives of the Canberra Grammar Vintage Club who are also with us here tonight. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from around Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors. To commence this evening's ceremony, I invite you all stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and other operations for over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Reginald Scott, who was killed fighting in Belgium during the First World War. Reginald James Scott was born in 1889, one of 4 children of Henry and Mary Scott, who lived in the Sydney suburb of Neutral Bay in New South Wales. Affectionately known as Bob to family and friends, he attended school at Marist College in North Sydney and worked as a marine engineer for Mort's Dock Shipyard in Balmain in the years before the First World War. Scott enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force at Victoria Barracks in Sydney in October 1916. He trained at the Royal Australian Showgrounds at Moore Park and embarked for the training camps in England with a reinforcement group for the 19th Battalion. After several more months in training on the Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, Bob sailed for the fighting in France and joined the 19th Battalion in May 1917. The battalion was resting, having come out of the line from bitter fighting at Bullecourt and replenishing its losses with reinforcements. As the 19th Battalion was brought up to strength, the focus of British operations shifted north into Belgium, where they intended to break out of Ypres salient. By driving north towards the village of Passchendaele, they planned to reclaim the Belgian coastline and capture the German submarine pens threatening the English Channel. After several weeks of bombarding the German lines, the 19th Battalion participated in the breakout attack down the Menin Road on the 20th of September, which enabled the British to bite and hold a significant portion of the German defences in their gradual approach to Passchendaele. Over the following weeks, the Australian infantry made a number of similar attacks that put them within a short distance of their intended objectives. By October, torrential rain and months of shellfire had turned the terrain into a quagmire of thick, glutinous mud that stalled the attacks that followed. Scott was involved in the costly and unsuccessful attack at Poolkapelle on the 9th of October and spent the following weeks in the Passchendaele area holding the modest gains made by the Australians as German artillery constantly shelled their positions. 8 weeks of fighting had cost the Australians over 36,000 casualties. By November, they were preparing to hand over to the Canadians, who would take Passchendaele village in the following weeks. On the 4th of November 1917, just before the 19th Battalion was relieved from the line near Westhoek, a German 5.9-inch shell landed on top of the dugout where Bob was resting with members of the platoon. The resulting explosion killed him instantly. Aged 27 at the time, Bob was buried nearby, but his grave was destroyed in subsequent fighting. Today, he is commemorated alongside 6,187 Australian troops killed in Belgium who have no known grave. Bob was a well-liked member of the battalion and was sorely missed by his family and friends. According to one of his comrades, he was one of the best. Reginald Scott is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. He is just one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Reginald Scott, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Could you all please stand for the ode and last post?
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We would like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today, and we wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.